Welcome to Leaders Recon, where we will be discussing leadership, warrior skills, and other unique opportunities within the G3 Leader Development Branch. I'm your host, Sergeant Jeremiah Miller, and today we will be discussing developing yourself as a leader and making the most out of your drill weekend. With us today is none other than the Command Sergeant Major of the Army National Guard, Command Sergeant Major John Sampa. Sergeant Major, welcome to the program, or welcome back, I should say.
Well, I'm glad to be here and motivated, excited, and thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, Sergeant Major. Thank you for making the time. And I'm really excited for this episode today because, and it's entirely for selfish reasons, I have been saving this question for months, and I didn't Google it. I didn't cheat. I wanted to hear it directly from you. We knew you were coming on the program, Sergeant Major. So a young E1 Private Miller was at boot camp and he was walking across the grass. And I was told to get off the Sergeant Major's grass. I may have done some push-ups at the time. I did the half right face. Can you tell me the story? I know the Army is steeped in tradition. Can you tell me the story behind the Sergeant Major's grass?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm always asked unusual questions, and that could be an unusual question, but it ain't. It's not. And so, but when you was walking across that grass, did you have a perfectly good sidewalk to walk on?
My memory's a little fuzzy, but I'm going to go ahead and plead the fifth. There was probably a sidewalk very nearby.
Got it. So basically, the reason why you probably walked across the grass is to take a shortcut. Mm-hmm. So there's two reasons why you don't walk on the grass. One is because we want the grass to look pristine as it's supposed to and not beat up and dead. Mm-hmm. But primarily, people walk across the grass because they're trying to take a shortcut. Mm. And in the Army, we don't want to take shortcuts, especially as leaders and as soldiers, because shortcuts get people killed, shortcuts get people hurt, and shortcuts diminishes accomplishing the mission. And so when we instill not taking shortcuts, we have a safe soldier, we have a well-trained soldier, we have an experienced soldier, and we have a unit that completes the mission because they didn't take shortcuts.
Absolutely. And I've got to tell you, Sergeant Major, I'm so glad I waited because I knew you were going to be so much more eloquent than Google. Actually, I never even thought of it like that. So it's a really interesting perspective to hear.
So, because again, next time you think you're going to walk across the grass, take a shortcut, think about all the experiences that you may be missing out on because you took that shortcut.
Absolutely.
So you're not developed as much as you probably could have been developed because you took a shortcut.
Mm-hmm. And so, Sergeant Major, just to kind of switch gears a little bit, and we've had you on the program before, so we wanted to change it up on you a little bit. Okay. And ask you an out of left field question. But what's something that's unusual or kind of like a fun fact about you that maybe not a lot of people know?
Well, I like telling corny jokes. I like hearing corny jokes. My family laughs at me all the time because they come and when they see me, they probably say, "What kind of joke you got for us today?" Or corny joke. And a lot of times it's jokes that I've heard from other folks. I'm just restating the joke itself because I find it pretty funny. And so I just like listen to a corny joke here, every now and then. And also I like telling because it breaks the ice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, then I might break the ice with this, Sergeant Major. Why do melons get married?
I don't know. They're melanized?
Because they can't elope.
They can't elope. Okay. That was corny.
It was corny.
So we say, take that back to the cornfield because it was so corny. But I got a joke for you.
All right, let's hear it, Sergeant Major.
So why is it not good to play cards in the jungle?
I've heard this one. Because there are too many cheetahs, Sergeant Major.
You're absolutely correct. So you heard that joke before. So
I have.
To my point, you thought it was corny, but then here we are talking about it again. So yes.
Absolutely. So I understand, and we talked a little bit about your background before. I know you worked as a state trooper. You have this incredible background in just service and public service. But I understand in your free time or one of your hobbies is to tinker around your ranch. What does that kind of look like?
Well, I like going out there because for relaxation. And so, with the tempo of everyday life in the city or your job, whatever the case may be, going out to the rural area just kind of more relaxing for me, kept me to get recharged and think about things and meditate on things, that kind of stuff. So I like going out there and just kind of tinkering around with But as we say, as we get older, our toys get bigger. So instead of having a little Tonka truck, tractor, whatever, that I'm pushing around as a kid, now I have one that I can actually tinker around with and work on itself. So that's what I like, going out to the farm itself and the ranch itself and just kind of relaxing.
It's a great way to decompress, Sergeant Major. And I've read scientific studies that say contact with dirt is good for your overall health and especially your mental health. They say it actually helps with depression.
Well, it's getting close to nature. Nature is real nice. So it's getting close to nature and with that relaxation, yes.
Well, now I understand why the infantry is so happy. They're constantly in dirt.
They're constantly dealing with nature.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So moving forward and into that drill weekend and developing yourself as a young NCO, I know when I was coming up, I would, so young soldiers are sponges. I watch good NCOs, I watched bad NCOs, and I took away lessons from both. That good NCO had a habit that I found effective or useful, went right into the toolbox, and you might see that leader who isn't effective or maybe even a little toxic.
Yes.
And that those lessons go into, I guess, the do not disturb zone, if you will. But after I moved on from that and I picked up E5, all this time I'd been looking at leadership and it looked like a circle. And when I got into that position, I realized it was really a sphere. It was much more dimensional. And I had to reevaluate a lot of the things that I thought I knew and a lot of the things that I had planned on doing as a leader. I had to totally readjust. What are some techniques that you think that soldiers can use, Sergeant Major, to preempt that feeling of disorientation and be prepared for it and overcome that?
Well, rank does not define if you're a leader or not. So even though you may be a E3, E4, if you have leadership skills within you, you can start being a leader then. You don't have to wait till you become an NCO to say that I am a leader. So leadership starts the minute you put the uniform on. And so that's when you start developing yourself to become that leader. So when you're actually in the position, you can handle this a little bit better because you've been developing yourself from day one. Now, you mentioned about you see certain type of leaders. And so in that development stage, you start looking at certain type of leadership styles and you can identify what type of leader you want to be. You may not be that exact person, but you can take a little bit from that, take a little bit from this person, and then combine it to what you want to be and make it to it. But you know what you don't want to be, and you know what you do want to be. And then when you get in that position, then that's when you make it happen. So I always say, if I ever become that leader in that position, this is what I want to do. And so when I got there, I already knew some of the things that I want to change or improve on or how I want to be, because before I got to that point, I already knew how to prepare myself for that. So when I got there, I just executed it. So it's all about set and go. So, I'm an E4 and I said, well, when I become that E5 sergeant, these are some of the things that I want to do as an E5 sergeant. So you start working on that and then bam, I am now promoted to E5 sergeant, and now it's time for me to execute. And so I'm not just starting from ground zero. I started when I was at PFC. I started when I was at E4. Now it's time for execution as the E5.
So some of our guests have talked a lot about mentorship. And I know when I was a young E3, E4, that made a lot of difference for me and helped prepare me for that leadership role when I did attain E5. How do young NCOs or young soldiers go about finding effective mentors, and what should that E5 to E4, E3, or staff sergeant to sergeant relationship look in terms of mentorship and left seat, right seat?
Great question. So, in today's society, today's world, we've gotten away from just having simple conversations with each other. We want to conversate through text message, Facebook or whatever. And I don't even say email because not everybody, people really use email. It's all Snapchat and all that kind of stuff. So there's no one-on-one conversation, interaction like you and I are having right now. So when I came up in my leader development, I got a lot of this one-on-one. And so for the young soldiers, young leaders of today, I still say that's still your basis. I mean, you can still have conversations or communicate through the technology of today, but still, you're going to still need that interaction from that senior leader or that leader to get that personal feeling, that personal conversation, that personal, intimate answer experience from that person, because you can only do so much.
Right.
Snapchat, you can only talk about so much on text messages. But again, you can really see the person's passion or experience through that intimate conversation. So finding that person. And so it's up to that leader of that squad or that platoon sergeant to really develop his or her soldiers. But if that is not happening in you, if you see a leader that you really admire or think is a good leader, there's nothing wrong with going to that leader and say, Sergeant Miller, I like the way you do stuff. Can you talk about this? Or I'd like to know a little bit more about this. And what is your experience? Have the same conversation. And Sergeant Miller will probably be more than elated that someone came up to him and said that. And so, because you never know who's watching you. So that's the reason why, as a leader, you have to always, be on point with stuff, because there's a lot of folks watching you and taking cues from what you're doing. And they say, I don't want to be like that person, but I do want to be like that person. But your leadership is always open and sought out by different people. And so again, if you look for a mentorship, if they're not coming to you to be mentored, go to that person and say, I like the way you do things. Or can you tell me about this? And so go after it. Don't just wait for it to come. Take that initiative, because that's what the Army is all about. Taking an initiative to do things. Because if you sit back and wait, it may not never come.
Right. And I see that so often. And you hear all the regular reasons why maybe it doesn't happen. Well, we only see each other for 2 or 3 days a month.
Yeah.
To those soldiers who that's kind of their fallback, I mean, what are some ways that these leaders, even throughout the month, and these young future leaders throughout the month, can still maintain that communication and that development process? Because I know there are a lot of young guys out there, Sergeant Major, who are hungry for that leadership role, and they want to be better, but maybe they just don't know how to go about it and do it properly.
So it goes back to what I said before. Just because you're E3, E4 doesn't mean you're not a leader. So you can still throw out suggestions, recommendations to your leader and say, hey,
to keep our communication during the month consistent or on point with each other, why don't we have a bi-weekly call with each other or something to that effect? You just don't have to communicate just on the weekend. And so let that leader or let that E4, E5, that's one way to start being a leader. Okay, PFC Miller, you're now in charge putting the teleconference together, or you're now in charge of putting this communication thing together to keep that communication during the week. And then also, you just simple phone call or simple using today's technology, because communication is much easier today than it was when I came up, because there was no cell phones. It was just telephone or your U.S. mail that we had. We didn't even have email. I mean, so I just kind of sit back and wonder how we even communicated back then, because those are the two forms of communication we had other than in person on the weekend. But now there are so many avenues of communication. And now you can actually, we talked about this earlier prior to our setting here, is that using, Microsoft Teams. Now you can actually have face-to-face being at different locations, and it's just like being in the same place at the same time. And so there's a lot of innovative ways today that you can communicate throughout the month. And so that's one thing that soldiers can use to keep that communication amongst each other and professional development amongst each other during the month as well too. By just checking on each other, by having those, it's on your own time, because you definitely ain't gonna get paid for it. But again, that's building the camaraderie, the team that you're trying to strive for with your squad or platoon.
So we discussed this a little bit already, Sergeant Major, but when you're building your leadership style, that young E3 is watching, they're starting to learn, they're starting to develop that leadership style. You know, you've got so many different kinds of leaders. You've got that soft-spoken professional, you've got the person whose volume knob is broken. What are some techniques that these young soldiers should be using and utilizing when trying to build their leadership style?
So the loudest leader is not always the effective leader, and you got a lot of effective leaders who's very quiet. So it's all about how you present yourself and what you're presenting. How effective is that? And so don't think that just because I'm not a loud leader, I'm not an effective leader, or don't think that because I'm a loud leader, that I am an effective leader, because sometimes you're too loud and nobody's listening. So it's about the information you're putting out and how you're putting it out. Now, people know when you're very sincere about certain things. So that's why, leaders who are very quiet probably is a lot more effective than that loud leader, because that loud leader a lot of time is hiding something. It's hiding lack of confidence, and I'm gonna be loud to disguise myself because I don't have that confidence. But me being loud, people may think that I'm this leader, versus a soft-spoken leader, and just can be just as effective. So don't change. So the bottom line is, don't change who you are. Be who you are, but in your leadership style, make sure it's effective in how you present it, and the quality of it, the truthfulness of it, but let the soldiers that you're leading understand that you care about them. Because in my experience, that leaders, not leaders, but soldiers, I truly believe that they really don't care how much you really know or how educated you are. In a sense, you try to prove that you Mr. Army of everything. They don't care about that. What they really care about is how much you really care about them. And I don't have to be loud if they know I care about you. So if I come to Sergeant Miller and Sergeant Miller knows that I have a great passion for his well-being, his career, or him promoting him in his career, he's going to follow me because he know I have his or her back, in a sense. So just be the person you are. Now, sometimes it may take you to be boisterous. The setting may cause you to be boisterous, but sometimes the setting doesn't require you to be boisterous. And so understand that as well, too, when it's time to be loud and when it's time not to be loud. And so, again, don't change who you are. But, again, that's why I go back to our early conversations, that you got certain leaders out there. Find out, take a little bit from each type of leadership style and develop your own leadership style and go from there.
And it's really interesting that you brought up being authentic, Sergeant Major, because that's something that we've heard before. In fact, Colonel Blanchard was in here about a week ago, and that was something that he said. He said soldiers can detect when you're not being authentic, and they're not going to respond to that. They want that authentic leader who's honed their own voice and who does take interest and care for the soldiers around them, both subordinates and seniors. Yes. So that it is very effective, and consistently sitting down on this podcast, I mean, we're sitting down with some of the best leaders in today's Army National Guard, and that's consistently the message that's coming across. So it must be true.
Yeah, it's been effective for me in a sense, because I always say that I am a command sergeant major for the soldiers, meaning that I'm always here for the soldiers. And so, the people that work with me, or my staff, so to speak, when we go different places, especially when we're walking, they hate to walk with me because it takes us, a while to get from point A to point B, because I'm always stopping to talk to soldiers. So in my opinion, even though I'm the command sergeant major of the Army National Guard, I feel like I'm never too big or too busy to stop to talk to soldiers, because it's, I know a lot of folks want to hear what I have to say because of the position I'm in. And so I'm always willing and openly want to share my experiences, or want to hear from them, hear their feedback, because their feedback or their conversation I had with them helped me determine how the Army needs to move forward, because I'm here to set the policies and regulations for those soldiers, that's for today's soldier and for the future soldiers. So I like hearing from soldiers.
Another thing that we heard from Colonel Blanchard was seek the hard jobs.
Yeah.
And those jobs are going to help generate a better, more well-rounded leader. What are some jobs or skill sets that these young soldiers should be seeking out in order to get that experience and broaden themselves?
So great question. So today, it seems like people want to take the easy way out of things, but you don't gain the experience taking the easy way out.
They're walking on the grass.
And I was going to that. We was talking about taking shortcuts at the beginning of this podcast. And so taking the shortcut to get to a certain, but when you take that shortcut, you're missing some of the vital experiences you need. So that's why we say take the hard jobs, or not necessarily take the hard jobs, but take every opportunity to gain that experience to make you a better leader, to make you a better soldier. And so sometimes it's not always going to be easy. And so a lot of folks want to take the easy route because, one, they don't want to be embarrassed, or they don't want to look weak, or they don't want to look incompetent and all that kind of stuff. That's okay, because you are learning and nobody knows everything. I'm the Command Sergeant for the Army National Guard. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything, because I don't know everything. And so I'm not afraid to jump into something. And if I mess up, I just mess up. But, learn from that mistake. That's how you become a better person. Because if everything was perfect, then we wouldn't need to train, because everybody's perfect. So that's why you always talk about maintenance is training. Because if things is always fixed and never is broken, then how do you get the experience when you really need the experience to learn how to repair something? So maintenance is training. And so again, seek those hard jobs or those experiences, because I always volunteer for things. And it's more or less to in basic training, some things don't volunteer for nothing, but really volunteering for stuff help you get that experience. It makes you a better leader, because now you can, when a soldier have an issue, you can personally understand what that issue is, better understand what that soldier is going through, because you've been there, done that, and you can have more empathy on what the soldier may be going through, or understand it better to help you lead in your leadership, and adjust for the time and this and that, because you may want to do some type of training and not really knowing all the things that goes into that training, because you never experienced some of the things that may take place in that training. You may have the training time you set may not be enough. But if you've been through that training and you know those experiences, you know the time to set for that particular training.
Absolutely.
And so that's what it's all about. So yes, when there's an opportunity comes up, and if it may seem hard, okay, no problem, do it anyway. Because at the end of the day, you're going to come out as a better soldier and as a better leader at the end of the day.
Oh, well, when you think about it, somebody always had to do it first. There was
right.
always that first person.
It's always that first person.
So we've touched on it already, Sergeant Major, but one of the most important things that an NCO can do, and young leaders in general can do, is take care of their soldiers both personally and professionally. That's not an easy thing to do, though, and you see these leaders who've got these developed strategies. What are some strategies that these soldiers can utilize to take care of other soldiers professionally and personally?
Yeah, so I always say the strength of a leader is a leader who take care of their soldiers personally and professionally, and stick with them throughout the situation. Because I've witnessed to where you have leaders that Sergeant Miller and I are, I'm Sergeant Miller's Staff Sergeant Miller's leader right now, and he's in my squad, and we're doing great. And then all of a sudden, Staff Sergeant Miller messes up and get himself in trouble, military-wise, Army-wise. So I'm going to give Staff Sergeant Miller a stiff arm, because he's going to make the squad look worse now because of his mess up. Or Sergeant Miller went out on his personal time and did something in the civilian world that got him in trouble. So I'm still going to give Staff Sergeant Miller the stiff arm because now he's making my squad look better. That's the wrong answer in a leadership role. You stick with the soldier through it all, because Staff Sergeant Miller was with the squad when the squad was doing well. Staff Sergeant Miller just took an off step, but it's my job as a leader to get Staff Sergeant Miller back on step again, whether it's personal or professional. Now, what the conversation me and Staff Sergeant Miller is going to have is, look, I'm here for you. I'm your leader. I'm here to go through this situation with you. You're going to be accountable for your actions, but you're still in the squad, and we're going to learn from that and keep moving forward from that. And so that's one thing a leader should understand about assisting people professionally and personally. Just because they messed up doesn't mean that you're no longer their leader anymore, and you leave it to them to handle that situation by themselves. No, that's when the soldier really need the leadership at that point, right? Now, to develop people professionally and personally is, again, to share, as a leader, to share your experience of certain things professionally and personal. Because, for me, being in the Army over 33 years now, I've had certain situations I had to deal with. And today, some of the soldiers may have those same situations, but I need to tell them soldier how I was able to navigate through those situations in order to help that soldier navigate, because he or she may not know that. And so that's one way for leaders, and not necessarily a leader. I mean, when you're having conversations amongst your squad, pick a topic. Does anybody have a situation they're going through and they'd like to share? Maybe we can talk about that and get different opinions, recommendations from the people around you. And then you take those recommendations as an individual and learn from that and try to incorporate that into your situation, and maybe it can help you. And so that's one way that we, as leaders, as members of the Army and your squad, your platoon, the company, can grow professionally and personally by learning from other folks' experiences.
And to tag off of that, Sergeant Major, I mean, you were talking about before staying in contact throughout the month and having those weekly calls and building that rapport with your soldiers and your leadership. That's going to give you that gateway to pull everybody into a huddle and say, hey, listen, does anybody have anything that's going on, and how can we as a group help you? And if they've got that familiarity and that trust, then that's so much easier to do.
Trust, because in order for a person to really tell you what their situation is, they got to be able to trust that you're going to help them sincerely and not use it as a negative on them.
Right.
And so they got to really trust you. And then when you have soldiers in your squad, your platoon, or company being able to trust you with personal information or personal things they're going through, you really got a close, cohesive team at that point.
One of the most popular tools I hear about is a leader's book. What is a leader's book, Sergeant Major, and what are some things that a leader's book should include? And do you have any examples of ways that a leader's book has helped you?
Yes.
So in my early days, it was actually a leader book. You actually had a book, had the soldier's name, address, phone number, the different things, hobby of the soldier, if the soldier's married, kid name, birthdays, wedding anniversary, all of that, even a map to the soldier's house if I need to. That was all part of, and then, the skills, civilian skills, the way he or she worked, what they did in civilian workplace, and then also mirror that was the Army MOS and the different skill sets that he or she, that's all part of that leader's book. It's still a leader's book, but in today's time, a lot of folks have this on their phones or computers or in an app. I mean, there's all type of different avenues you can put the same information in. So regardless of whether it's in an app or you got it on your phone or it's actually have a hard copy book, the same information is still the same. The leader's book is to use for as a leader for you to help manage your soldiers, knowing what they're capable of doing and for their skills, what they can bring to the squad, to the platoon, of the company. And then also, on a personal note, getting to know the soldier himself on a personal side of the house, knowing the soldier, his family, his, if he or she has a spouse name, anniversaries, what they do for a living, kids, and all that. That's what the leader's book is all about. It's getting to know your soldier. Because one thing about building a good team, a good squad, is to know your soldiers personally, not just knowing what they do in the Army, but to know them personally. And that's what the leader's book is all about.
So every leader is challenged at some point in their career with that soldier who is unmotivated or unwilling to grow or learn or improve. Do you have any advice to that young soldier who's struggling to break through to this troubled soldier? You know, they've tried the carrot, they've tried the stick, and just they can't get through to this soldier.
So the Army is not for everybody. And so we have to have those hard conversations with people. Now, first of all, you try to find out why the soldier is not getting it. Maybe it's the MOS that the soldier is in, is not fitting that soldier. And so it goes back to the leader book again. You know, what are some of the things, what are some of the interests of the soldier? What are some of the strong skill sets of that soldier? So then maybe we need to find that soldier a different MOS that he or she may want to do or love to do, may find themselves in that. But even at that, if the soldier doesn't have that, skill set that the Army may provide or not willing to do that, then maybe it's time for that soldier to exit the formation at that point. But we want to try to do everything we can to keep the soldier in uniform and try to find that avenue to help motivate that soldier. Because again, the soldier probably joined the Army to be a infantryman, but he or she just don't have the infantry skills.
Right.
But maybe they better as a medic, or maybe they better as a cook. And so before we, tell the soldier to take the uniform off completely, well, let's try to find other avenues that he or she may be involved in. So there's all kind of different things soldiers can do in the Army, and not just the first thing they join the Army for. And so again, personally talking to the soldier, finding what he or she likes are, what their strong skills are, and try to marry that up to whatever they can possibly do in the Army itself. It may be, I'm an infantryman, but I may, in civilian world, may be a mechanic. So why I try not being a mechanic in the Army then? That's what I'm used to doing. That's what I love. That's my passion. And so finding soldiers' passion and love for certain things to try to help motivate that soldier, help the soldier get back on track again.
It absolutely stands true, Sergeant Major. I mean, I'd spent 13 years in the National Guard, and I was coming up on my ETS date. I just been married. We had we have a child on the way, and we had a business, and we were working at that full time, and being in the formation, I knew I might not be able to bring 100%, and that wasn't okay with me as a leader if I couldn't be there 100% of the time. And then the National Guard Bureau called and said, "Hey, we know you like cameras. Do you want to come film a podcast for us?" And so here we are. So that absolutely does work, and it does keep soldiers in the formation. Yep. Even ones who might be motivated, but maybe they've hit that wall.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. So they did it for a while, and they want to try something different. So a lot of soldiers do something different, because I always say when a soldier finally take the uniform off for good, I want he or she to say that I had every opportunity that I possibly could have been afforded, and I had a great experience doing it all. And so the only way we can do that is continually to seek what the soldier's interest is and try to marry that soldier up to those interests. Now, you brought up a good point about, you was married, new kid and everything, and think your lifestyle had changed. And so there was some adjustment that needed to be made. And so even now, even in the Army National Guard, soldiers need to understand that, yes, it's important for you to be on drill weekend, because that's when, the unit needs you to be on drill weekend. But there's a time where, it's hard to make drill weekend. Have your leaders either, I always say try to make up drill prior to drill, because when drill comes, you're actually present. And so, there's always something to do at the units. So if you're having a lifestyle change and adjustment, talk to your leaders and say, "Hey, for this month, I like to come in on these days during the week or whatever the case may be, because I'm having a hard time making it on scheduled drill weekend that way. And so leaders should be open to that, because it's not all the time, but it's just something to help you get through your lifestyle change in order to keep you in uniform, to take care of you and your family. And in that way, when you actually get back on track again, everything is good. You're not totally lost. So the bottom line is I want soldiers to understand that you don't always have to show up on drill weekend. There's other avenues for you to get credit for drill prior to drill. That's what I promote, coming in to do your time prior to drill instead of after drill itself.
Kind of converse to that soldier who's unmotivated and unwilling to learn. Sometimes you get those young soldiers who are they are hungry, and they're skilled and they're talented, and you can see the absolute potential in them. And sometimes leadership can almost slow that soldier down, and then you see that soldier go from high speed to unmotivated and unwilling to be a part of the formation. What can we do as leaders to pave the road in front of that soldier so that they can get those experiences, that they can get that leadership experience, that they can go to the schools that they're interested in going to, and keep that high-speed soldier motivated?
Yeah. So again, try to afford every opportunity for that soldier who's highly motivated, and delegate. You know, as a leader, you have a lot of things on your plate. And so if you have a soldier who's willing and motivated to do things, try to delegate some of that things that you have on your plate to that soldier to help you, and in return, it's going to help the whole squad, whole platoon, whole company in a sense. So when you identify those soldiers, delegate some of your tasks to those soldiers to help you, and that'll help continue to develop that soldier to become that leader, and also satisfy his hunger or her hunger to keep motivated as they move through their time in the uniform.
So we've developed ourselves as leaders, Sergeant Major, and we've started to develop those soldiers, and everything's looking good. And now drill weekend is here. And sometimes drill weekend, it just feels like you got to fit 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag. How can soldiers and leaders approach a drill weekend beforehand and set themselves up for success, that they're able to hit all of those check boxes to make sure that they're accomplishing the mission, that they're training the standard not to time, and they're making most of every minute at drill weekend?
So again, you're absolutely right. It seemed like there's so many things to do on drill weekend and not enough time to do it. So the commanders of the units, they prioritize what needs to be done, and based on that, you got to remember, drill weekend is not going to make anybody a subject matter expert in anything. The purpose of drill weekend is to keep you familiarized with your skill sets and not lose your skill. It's to keep you familiarized with it and go from there. So it's good to prioritize what needs to be done, what have to be done, and if anything is low hanging, we could get to that. So it's all about prioritization of the things that needs to be done. And so you focus on that, and you'll be okay.
And that was something we found in my unit, Sergeant Major, was we would have a squad leader and team leader call a week before drill and say, hey, listen, like, this is the drill schedule. These are the things that changed since the last time we spoke. These are the things that we absolutely have to get done. And this is the frago that came in from left field. So how do you as a group think that we should tackle this? The platoon sergeant would stand back and say, hey, listen, I have a plan. I want to hear from you what you think we can do to make the most of this. And these are the concerns I have in terms of time or in terms of resources. And I found coming together as a group, it really did change the game for us. And it made our drill weekends, one, more enjoyable, but significantly more productive too.
Yes, I mean, you may have a schedule plan, and then the frago come in to kind of change that. So depending on what that frago is, it may not take the entire squad, entire platoon to satisfy that change. It may just take one or two people to satisfy that change. So when I talk about prioritization, that's why you have to look into and see how this is going to affect my squad, how it's going to affect the whole platoon or company. Does it take everybody to change it? No. Well, then let's assign a couple of people to it and knock out that task, and we can still move forward with the original plan itself. So all about prioritization and troop to task. It's always the key. When you have assign a task, what is the requirements for that task, and it goes back to troop to task. How many people it's going to take to complete this task? Not every task don't always take everybody to complete it. Some do, but some don't. A lot of them don't. So it's always troop to task in order to complete those assignments.
I love that perspective, Sergeant Major. Leaders will often spend weeks and months leading up to any given drill weekend planning and setting things forward, and then again that frago comes in and maybe that whole plan blows up. What can those soldiers, those team leaders, those squad leaders do to make the most of those white spaces that appear in the schedule, those big blocks of unallocated time where up until this point that drill weekend was packed full? Because again, it does, sometimes you have a drill weekend where you've just got too much to do, and sometimes you've got drill weekends where there's not enough to do. How can soldiers and leaders take advantage of that time?
So again, go back to prioritization, and then always have some type of training, be prepared for training in those spaces that we consider white space. And it goes back to what we call hip pocket training. And so everything doesn't have to be in a PowerPoint situation. Just a group of soldiers sitting down together underneath a tree, as we used to say back in the day, or in a parking lot, or in a classroom, or in a drill hall floor. As long as you're having some type of discussion or actually going through some type of task, task condition standard type training, that's training. And so you get a sign-in roster. It don't have to be pretty. Write it down. This is the training you conducted. Have everybody, date it, sign it, last four or whatever's required for DTMS, and have it submitted to the readiness seal for training. And so always, a leader should always have some type of prepared training for that white space. It can just be as simple as, we talk about suicides. Well, let's just talk about suicide in our squads. What's your opinion about it? Do you know of anybody that's still training. And so always have something prepared for when you have those white space that you can train on.
And you bring up such a good point, Sergeant Major, because that whole concept of signing in, typically when soldiers look at hip pocket training, they're like, okay, well, we're going to do this thing and it's just going to go into the ether. But having that sign-in roster, it gives ownership to that training. It's, hey, this is now real. It's tangible. It's something that the unit's going to track or the state's going to track, and it reflects well on the company, the platoon, the squad, and it gives those soldiers that sense of ownership too. So it's great.
Yeah. So again, it don't always have to be a PowerPoint setting or in a classroom setting. Just as long as you're doing something that's promoting the Army mission, the Army values, the Army way of life, that's training, and you document it, and it's submitted for record of training, you're trained.
Well, Sergeant Major, we kind of wrap up every segment with a couple of questions. The first is there any particular resource or tool that you would recommend to young soldiers or leaders looking to further develop themselves?
Well, there's so many tools out there for soldiers to learn. Because of technology, social media, internet, there's a lot of YouTube. There's a lot of things soldiers can continue to learn. And so if a soldier feel like they're weak in certain skills or certain information, I constantly just take the initiative to use today's technology to educate yourself on certain things, not wait for someone to come tell you. Because I always use the example that an E4 get promoted to E5. Now that I'm at E5 sergeant, I'm automatically is viewed by the E4, E3, E2 population as an NCO, as a subject matter expert on how to resource things. Key word, resource. Not know, but resource. So understand that just because you're a leader, you shouldn't think that you should know everything, but you should be able to know how to resource to provide information to folks to go do the research or whether go look for information, but also have some knowledge yourself about certain things of the Army, because now all of a sudden you went from the person seeking the information to the person providing the information itself. So constantly take the initiative to learn and not wait for other folks to come tell you what to learn or how to learn itself. And so the tools are out there. So constantly utilize that, especially when you know your own weakness. Get smart on your own, and then that way it makes you a better leader.
Right. And it holds so true, Sergeant Major, because I mean, when you go to the basic leadership course or the advanced leadership course, the majority of the course is research, and you do learn quite a bit, but really you're learning that good research skill. And so, yeah, it absolutely holds true that that's your most powerful tool if you're looking to develop yourself, is just your ability to research and find the information.
Yes, learn how to research that information, but also as a leader, giving guidance to the soldiers of where to find that information.
So we've talked a lot about professional relationships with soldiers and building skill sets. Looking back at your National Guard career so far, what has been your biggest lesson learned and your key to success?
Well, lesson learned, the biggest one, got to think about that because I've had a whole bunch of lesson learns. But I think the key to my success is that, one, like I said earlier, I'm a soldier. The rank doesn't make me a soldier. I make the rank. So understanding that even though I'm the Command Sergeant Major of the Army National Guard, I'm still a soldier, and I don't think that I'm too high that I cannot talk to soldiers at any rank itself. So staying humble to that is one thing. It's been one of my key to my successes. The second thing to my success is the ability to allow other folks to make recommendations, state their opinions on different things, and then I base my guidance or my way forward based on what I hear from other folks, because I don't know everything, and I'm all about the organization. So when you make decisions based on the organization and not the person or a particular person, then you're going to be successful. And so that's been another key to my success. Another, I feel like a key to my success is that the ability to change your mind.
Absolutely.
So just because I made a decision on something initially doesn't mean that it has to continue to go that route, especially when things change, the environment around you changes.
Right.
And so I think it's kind of indicative that you don't change, because then you're headed toward failure. And so just because you change your mind doesn't mean you're weak.
Right, absolutely.
So you take the conditions at hand and base your decision based on the conditions around you. And if you have to change your mind, you change your mind. But don't feel like you're appearing weak in front of others just because you change your mind. Right. You change your mind for the betterment of the organization. You change your mind to complete the mission because things around you change. So I think that's one of the another key to my success is that I've been able to not feel that I've lost my authority or my leadership because I changed my mind on something.
Sure.
Well, and it's so interesting that you say that, Sergeant Major, because the fear of changing one's mind, I think that's an ego thing, and humility is I think it was Marcus Aurelius that said, humility is the only antidote to ego and pride, and when you are humble, like you were mentioning, you don't care if somebody's going to look at you as weak because you are looking at this objectively. Your ego isn't getting in the way and preventing you from making the change that's necessary.
So you bring up ego, so that's another thing. Do not allow your ego to get in front of you, because when you do, it's hard to reel it back.
Yep.
And so make sure your ego is always in check, because your ego could be a downfall to your leadership versus a positive to your leadership. Yeah. So don't never let your ego get in front of you. Always keep that in check.
Absolutely. Well, Sergeant Major, that concludes our program today. Thank you so much for coming back and sharing a lot of your wisdom and your experience. You know, listening to you speak, at least me personally, I mean, I look back at things that I was doing as a leader and like, oh, well, I need to adjust this. And this is a good point. I didn't even think about it like this. So I hope the folks listening in this podcast get that same feeling out of it, and we walk away as a better and more agile force. So Sergeant Major, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, and I'm here to support the program, the podcast, and develop future leaders, because my days are getting close to where I'll exit the uniform, and I want to ensure that I've done all I can to set the organization up for the future and set young leaders up for success to continue the Army the Army National Guard too, as it continue to roll along itself. So again, I'm here for you. I'm a Command Sergeant Major for the soldiers. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. And you know, just to tag off of that, Marcus Aurelius said, the only wealth that is eternal is the wealth that you give away, and you are giving away a wealth of knowledge. That is wonderful.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information on any of the topics discussed today, please contact us through our social media pages in the links below. Tune in to Leaders Recon over the next few weeks as we bring in today's leaders and pioneers to discuss their experiences, share their wisdom, and help you grow as a leader. We will also be announcing opportunities to sharpen your skills and expand your toolbox as members in today's Army National Guard. See you next time. If you like this episode of Leaders Recon, please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.